So, Game of Thrones fan theories. Who's the Targaryen? Who's the White King? Let's have a bit of a chat. So, Game of Thrones fan theories. There may be some spoilers, so just to warn you that there might be, depending how far you've seen. Obviously, I haven't seen past what has been on the TV. I think I've just watched episode 6, so I'll try and avoid some spoilers for that if I can and just deal with previous episodes. So, what do we know so far about who is a Targaryen? Now, Jon Snow. He's a Targaryen, and possibly the rightful king. There is actually a family tree that HBO did release, so let's have a quick look at that. Let me just get that up on screen. So, here we go. Here is what is recognised as the current family tree, although possibly, according to some fan theories, may not be correct. So as we see, Jon Snow at the bottom, his parents are Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen, which has been hinted at before. The scene we saw where Bran went back in time, saw his father try and rescue Ned's sister from the Targaryens. She had a baby, which then was revealed to be Jon Snow. Now, at first you may think, oh, maybe it's Robert's son, because obviously Robert was in love with Lyanna Stark. Not the case. It would be a nice way, but then why would she tell Ned to keep the baby a secret and not tell Robert? Because obviously if it was Robert's, he would be overjoyed and he would obviously name him a Baratheon rather than a Snow, because it would be his legitimate son with the woman he loved anyway, so he would be in line for the throne, and that would have made it a much different show. So forget Robert. So Rhaegar Targaryen. Now at first it was believed, and according to that, the Starks and Robert Baratheon believed that she was kidnapped by Rhaegar Targaryen, but it doesn't appear that way. According to some information we had on the show from Gilly and Sam, Rhaegar Targaryen had an annulment from Elia Martell and remarried in a secret ceremony, so to Lyanna Stark, and they had a child, which was Jon Snow. So Jon Snow isn't a Snow, he is a legitimate Targaryen and a Stark. That actually makes him first in line for the throne above Daenerys, even though Daenerys is in effect his aunt, because she was brother to Rhaegar, who is Jon's father. Little bit odd when you really think about it, considering they're similar age, and they'll possibly end up together anyway. But as it stands, Jon Snow has a more legitimate claim to the throne, being the son of the rightful next in line. So obviously he was dead, so his son would be passed on. It doesn't go from brother to sister, it goes father to son. So that would mean Jon Snow is actually next in line for the throne. Very interesting. Now, back to fan theories. Okay, so this is where it might get a little bit confusing. Now, we know Jon Snow Targaryen, fine. Now, there's been a fan theory floating around for a while about Tyrion Lannister, that he's not a Lannister, he's actually a Targaryen. Now, it's a nice, neat thing to look at, because as we know from what they've said, Tywin Lannister's wife was quite liked by the Mad King. Now, when they got married, as you know from a lot of medieval stuff, and like look at Braveheart, there was always the rights of the first night, or the king's right, or whatever they want to call it, where the king, or in Braveheart, the local lord, had the right to sleep with a woman on the night she was married. Now the Mad King was actually upset by that because he quite liked Tywin Lannister's wife. So there is that, well, at some point did he rape or seduce her, and Tyrion Lannister was the result of that union, and then obviously she died in childbirth when he was born, a little bit different to the other Lannisters, because he does look obviously quite a lot different, but he does have dark hair, which goes against the whole generally Targaryen thing, but then Jon Snow has jet black hair, so he obviously takes after the Stark family rather than Targaryens. Now, it's a nice little theory as to why Tyrion Lannister is different from his brother and sister, and also why the dragons seem to have an affinity for him. That's quite neat, but I don't particularly buy that. It's is too convenient, to be honest. More likely, there may be two other Targaryens that are currently Lannisters, and that would be Cersei and her twin brother Jaime. Now we go back to the whole King's right of the first night. If, for instance, the Mad King did sleep with Tywin Lannister's wife on the wedding night or quite soon afterwards, what if then she had the twins from him, not from Tywin Lannister? Now there's a couple of things that do make sense with that. Now we know Targaryens are a little bit unhinged. We know that because the Mad King, Daenerys, shows a little bit of that. Her brother Viserys was also completely mental as well. Obviously Cersei is a bit mental. She also has quite blonde hair, which is obviously a Lannister trait anyway, but it's also a Targaryen trait. Her brother isn't quite so mad, so he's taken the other side of the family, but they're also quite attractive as well, which is obviously, they would say about Targaryens are quite attractive. Like Rhaegar Targaryen was supposed to be a fairly attractive guy, which in fact Cersei has mentioned previously that she had a thing for him. When did I mention that? Remember in a flashback episode when she went to see a witch and she asked the question if she would marry a prince. It was probably Rhaegar Targaryen she was referring to because they did meet previously. So you think that's a bit strange because they're brother and sister, but that's something Targaryens do, as we know, and they've mentioned many times, is they keep it in the family. To keep the bloodline pure, they marry brother to sister. At one point Daenerys thought that she'd have to marry her brother Viserys. Obviously that didn't happen because he was quite greedy and just selling her off as soon as she could to get an army. So, you know, that kind of makes sense from the Targaryen bloodline. Cersei has a thing for her brothers. So she had a thing for Rhaegar Targaryen, didn't know it was a brother at the time, but yeah, so liking one brother, and of course she is with her twin brother, Jaime, so that kind of makes a lot of sense. And they are very different from the younger brother. So, quite interesting. It's actually quite a nice way, when you look at it, that Tywin Lannister only had one actual son who he absolutely hated and also killed him in the end. So that's something that Jaime Lannister and Tyrion have in common. They both killed their fathers in that case, because obviously Jaime Lannister killed the Mad King, who was possibly his father, according to this fan theory. Well, I'm not sure what you think of that. You know, have a discussion on the comments if you want, see if you think that's quite good. It's quite a nice little kind of way to go about it, to be honest. So, yeah, although obviously you could say, so that means that Cersei and or Jaime could be in line for the throne. Well, no, because they're both illegitimate. So it would still be Jon Snow that has a rightful claim to the throne. It's just all getting kind of odd. But that's the fan theory anyway. So that's who could be or may not be Targaryens. So it's quite an interesting one. I know that they've said for a while that would be 3 Targaryens, possibly, well, 3 Dragon Riders. Everyone assumes it could be 3 Targaryens. I don't think the last one's going to be. There's a possibility, obviously, that it's going to be Daenerys and Jon both riding dragons. Possibly Tyrion riding the last one. Now, obviously, he's not a Targaryen, we don't think. But he does seem to be friendly with the dragon, so it makes sense if he rode on a dragon's back. Few things that could go along that. Maybe Bran Stark can actually control a dragon, like he could crows and that sort of thing, and do that whole thing. That might be quite an interesting way to go about it. But episode 6 has just been on, so if you haven't seen it yet, spoilers now, right now, don't listen to the next bit. Okay, something that was set up through a little bit of the last part of the episode, when Daenerys turned up with the dragons and one of them got killed and fell through the ice. As soon as that happens, you think, oh, big dragon, White Walkers can resurrect the dead, make them on their side, we're going to have a frost dragon. That's kind of cool. And yeah, at the end of the episode, you do see the dragon get pulled out the ice by the zombies, and its eyes turn blue, so it is now a bad guy. And of course it can't be breathing fire because White Walkers are all about cold and ice, so it's going to be a frost dragon, which is pretty cool. So does that mean the 3rd Dragon Rider isn't on the side of good? The 3rd Dragon Rider is going to be the Night King. Or we go back to the whole Bran might be able to control dragons, so can he then control the frost dragons? So we'll have good dragons all over. I think it's going to be more interesting to have two good dragons, one evil dragon. It would be the whole Song of Fire and Ice. It's still the whole theme. So you get Jon Snow, Daenerys, so she's the unburnt. He's obviously apart from the cold and so on, so it's fire and ice. Seems to be obviously the first book is the Song of Fire and Ice. So it's kind of nice having that duality of the fire and the ice with the dragons as well. So I think that's going to be quite a good thing. So that's kind of cool. This kind of leads on to the next theory, which is kind of a long shot and time travel-y, timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly type of Doctor Who and everything else, and nah, it's a bit strange. So there's this fan theory going around at the moment about Bran Stark, that Bran Stark is in fact the Night King. Yeah, bit strange. It's explainable in a couple of ways of why people have come up with the idea. So when Bran Stark has his visions of the past and he's met the Night King could interact with him. Why is that? So unless they share some kind of common soul or something definitely connects them. So is it that they are in fact the same person? So at some point does Bran go back in time, or Three-Eyed Raven, whatever you want to call him these days, does he go back in a vision to try and stop the Night King from being created? You know, maybe they're starting to lose the war and he wants to go back and try and erase it all from happening. What if he goes back in time with the forest folk and so on to try and stop them from stabbing the who becomes the Night King in the heart? What if he then is the one that gets stabbed in the heart during that flashback that he does? So then he then becomes the Night King in the past, which would explain why he has odd powers, why the Night King interacts with him. And it's kind of like one of those full circle or Ouroboros, figure of eight infinity thing, that it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If he didn't go back in time to stop the Night King, they wouldn't have made him the Night King, and he wouldn't have had to go back in time to stop it. And it's kind of like one of those never-ending circles, which is in some ways quite a neat way to explain why he's connected to the Night King and why it all happens. It doesn't explain why he'd become evil as the Night King is, unless part of the process is that he then becomes evil, because obviously the Night King was created by the forest folk to fight off the humans that were killing them off, and it was a big mistake because it all went a bit pear-shaped. So part of becoming the Night King is to become evil. So maybe not. It's an interesting one. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments what you think of that. I think that's probably enough far-fetched and nonsense and Lannisters are Targaryens and all sorts of other things. Let me know in the comments. I'll have a discussion of it, and I'll make another video pulling up some of the points any of you guys make. So I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe and like as well. And as I said, comment, let's start up a discussion on what you think of these fan theories. I think they're quite interesting. It's quite a neat way around a few different things, possibly a bit too neat in some of the cases, but it'd be interesting to see where we go. The other thing, I've heard recently that Series 7, which is due to release next year, may not be released until 2019 or at the earliest late 2018, because they haven't actually written most of it yet. That'll be a little bit annoying because I'm really getting into Game of Thrones, so we'll have to see anyway. So thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed the video. I'll do some more Game of Thrones ones at some point. I've just actually started reading the books. I'd read a lot, but I've avoided reading the books because I'm enjoying the TV show, and the books are generally better than TV shows and movies, so it's kind of like I don't want to taint it. Now I know the TV show's gone further than the books, so that's why I've kind of started now, and I know it's a big book. I've actually got an audio book from Audible at some point in the distant past. I got hold of it, and I just realized it's 33 hours 50 minutes long. That's almost 34 hours of an audiobook. That is a long time. So I'll see what it's like. It seems to be pretty good so far, so yeah, let's just try it anyway. That's me waffling on for far too long anyway. So thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, that would be fantastic, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.